Welcome to A Cup of History, a podcast where we explore key events and figures from world history. I'm Chris, your host, and together with our experts Jesse and Emily, we'll make world history easy to understand and engaging for everyone. Welcome everyone to another episode of A Cup of History. Today we're starting a brand new series on one of Rome's most famous and complex figures, Julius Caesar. But we'll take it slow and focus on his early years in this first episode. Jesse, where does our story begin?
Great to be here, Chris. Julius Caesar's story starts back in 100 BC, in the bustling city of Rome. He was born into a family called the Julii, who were part of the patricians' Rome's elite class. But here's the thing. Although his family was noble, they weren't exactly powerful or influential at the time.
That's right. You could say they were more like a noble family that had seen better days. His father was a respectable politician, but he wasn't aiming for the top spots in Roman politics. So young Caesar didn't have everything handed to him on a silver platter.
Oh, I see. So despite being born into a high-status family, he still had to work his way up. What was his childhood like?
Well, there isn't much detailed information about Caesar's childhood, but it's clear he was given a good education. He learned how to speak and write in both Latin and Greek, which was very impressive for the time. He was also taught about Roman history, law, and public speaking.
And remember, being able to speak well and persuade people was a key skill for anyone wanting to get into Roman politics. Caesar showed promise from an early age, but things got complicated when he was a teenager.
Complicated? What happened?
Caesar's father died suddenly when he was about 16 years old, leaving him as the head of the family. It was a huge responsibility for someone so young. And then, political chaos hit Rome. There was a civil war between two powerful factions, one led by a general named Marius, and the other by a dictator named Sulla.
Right. And to make matters worse, Caesar's family was connected to Marius through his aunt's marriage. So when Sulla won the civil war, anyone connected to Marius was in serious danger.
That sounds scary. How did Caesar manage to survive all that?
It was tough. Sulla ordered Caesar to divorce his wife, Cornelia, because she was also connected to Marius's side. But Caesar refused. Sulla was furious and wanted Caesar dead. But thanks to some powerful friends and even the Vestal Virgins priestesses of Rome, Caesar's life was spared.
Even then, Sulla is said to have warned, "There are many Mariuses in that young man," meaning he saw a lot of potential danger in Caesar. Eventually, Caesar went into hiding and had to keep a low profile for a while.
Wow, that's quite a start to his career. So what did Caesar do next after surviving that close call?
After things settled down a bit, Caesar decided to focus on his military career. He left Rome and served in Asia Minor, where he won a prestigious award called the Civic Crown for his bravery in battle.
And this recognition boosted his reputation in Rome. It's like being given a Medal of Honor today. People started noticing him, not just as someone with connections, but as a skilled and brave soldier in his own right.
That makes sense. So did he stay in the military, or did he come back to Rome?
Good question. After his time in the military, Caesar returned to Rome and started working in the courts as a prosecutor. He was really good at public speaking and convincing people, so he began to build up his name in legal cases.
But he was still careful. He didn't push too hard against the powerful people in Rome. Instead, he focused on small cases, gaining experience and slowly increasing his influence.
That's smart. So he was building his reputation bit by bit. What was his big break?
His big break came when he was elected as a military tribune. This was his first official political role, and from there, he climbed the ladder step by step, becoming quaestor, aedile, and then Pontifex Maximus, which was a high-ranking religious position.
Being Pontifex Maximus gave him a lot of respect and visibility. And it also allowed him to make connections with other powerful people in Rome.
So he was laying the groundwork for his political career. Did he face any major challenges during this time?
Yes, he did. One of the biggest challenges was debt. To win elections and organize public games, Caesar had borrowed a lot of money. He was practically drowning in debt, but he kept pushing forward. He knew if he could achieve higher office, he could pay it all back.
And that's where the first triumvirate comes in, a political alliance between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. Together, they were able to dominate Roman politics for a while, and it was during this time that Caesar was elected as consul.
That's quite a climb. So, becoming consul was his big goal at this stage?
Yes, it was. And after he became consul, he secured a governorship over the provinces of Gaul and Illyricum, which gave him command of an army and the chance to make a name for himself through military conquest.
And that's where we'll pick up next time. Caesar's campaigns in Gaul and how they changed everything for him and Rome.
Looking forward to it. That's it for today's episode of A Cup of History. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Welcome back to A Cup of History. Last time, we talked about Julius Caesar's early years and his rise through Roman politics. Today, we're going to cover his time in Gaul. Jesse, why was Gaul so important for Caesar?
Great to be back, Chris. Gaul was crucial because it was a region full of tribes that Rome hadn't fully conquered yet. It was a wild and dangerous place, but it was also a land of opportunity. If Caesar could conquer Gaul, he'd gain not only wealth but also respect and power back in Rome.
Exactly. But conquering Gaul wasn't just about fighting battles. Caesar had to deal with a lot of politics among the tribes. Gaul wasn't one unified country. It was made up of many different tribes, each with their own leaders, alliances, and rivalries.
So it wasn't just a straightforward war. Caesar had to play a political game too.
That's right. He started his campaign in 58 BC by stopping a tribe called the Helvetii from moving through Roman territory. The Helvetii were looking for a new home, but Caesar saw this as a threat and decided to block their path.
It wasn't easy. The Helvetii were a huge group, with tens of thousands of people. Caesar built a wall and dug trenches to keep them from crossing into Roman land. It was a tense standoff, but in the end, Caesar defeated them in battle and forced them to go back home.
That must have made him pretty popular back in Rome.
It did. News of his victory spread quickly, and the people of Rome were thrilled. They saw Caesar as a hero who was protecting their borders. But this was just the beginning.
After dealing with the Helvetii, Caesar moved on to face another powerful group, the Germanic tribes led by a chieftain named Ariovistus. This was a tough challenge because the Germanic warriors were known for being fierce fighters.
How did Caesar handle it?
He used a combination of strategy and diplomacy. First, he tried to negotiate with Ariovistus, but when that failed, he led his army into battle. It was a close fight, but Caesar's troops managed to defeat the Germans and push them back across the Rhine River.
Wow, that's impressive. It sounds like Caesar was always at the front, leading his men.
Yes, he was. Caesar wasn't the kind of general who sat back and gave orders. He was right there with his soldiers, fighting alongside them. That's one of the reasons they were so loyal to him. They knew he wasn't asking them to do anything he wouldn't do himself.
That kind of leadership must have made his army very strong.
His soldiers trusted him completely, and that loyalty was key in his later battles. After defeating Ariovistus, Caesar continued to expand Rome's control over Gaul. He fought against various tribes like the Belgae in the north and the Veneti in the west.
Each campaign brought new challenges. The Belgae, for example, formed a massive coalition of tribes to resist Caesar. They even managed to surprise Caesar's forces at the Battle of the Sambes. It was a tough fight, but in the end, Caesar's tactics won the day.
So it was victory after victory for Caesar, but wasn't there a major revolt in Gaul at some point?
Yes, there was. The biggest challenge came in 52 BC, when a young chieftain named Vercingetorix united many of the Gallic tribes to rebel against Rome. This was no small uprising. Vercingetorix was a skilled leader, and he knew how to rally his people.
He used guerrilla tactics, burning towns and fields to prevent Caesar's army from finding food and supplies. It put a lot of pressure on Caesar's forces, and for a while it seemed like the Romans might be forced to retreat.
But Caesar didn't give up, did he?
Not at all. he decided to lay siege to Vercingetorix's stronghold at a place called Alesia. Caesar built massive fortifications around the city, trapping Vercingetorix and his men inside. But then things got even more complicated. Vercingetorix's allies arrived with a huge army to break the siege.
It was a do-or-die moment. Caesar's men were caught between the defenders inside the city and the relief army outside. But instead of panicking, Caesar stayed calm and directed his troops to build another line of fortifications facing outward.
So they were fighting on two fronts?
Exactly. It was incredibly risky, but it worked. After days of intense fighting, Caesar managed to defeat both Vercingetorix's men and the relief army. Vercingetorix had no choice but to surrender.
That victory at Alesia was a turning point. With Vercingetorix captured, the resistance in Gaul collapsed. Caesar had effectively conquered the entire region.
And what did that mean for Caesar back in Rome?
It meant he became incredibly popular. He sent news of his victories to Rome, and the Senate declared several days of thanksgiving in his honor. His conquests in Gaul made him one of the richest and most powerful men in Rome.
But with great power came great fear. Many senators, including Caesar's old ally Pompey, started to worry that Caesar was becoming too powerful. They thought he might use his army to take over Rome itself.
So that's where the tension between Caesar and Pompey began. What happens next?
That's what we'll dive into in the next episode. We'll see how the relationship between Caesar and Pompey broke down and eventually led to a civil war that changed Rome forever.
Can't wait to hear more. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Join us next time on A Cup of History as we continue the story of Julius Caesar.